His phone wouldn't stop vibrating in the cup holder, and the sound kept cutting through the quiet like a warning he didn't deserve. The screen lit up again with the same calendar alert he couldn't ignore. Zurich deal final call in 4 minutes. He glanced at the rearview mirror and saw her face. Perfect makeup, tight jaw, eyes fixed on the glass towers ahead like she could bully them into cooperating. Her untouched Starbucks sat in the back seat, the lid slick with condensation, the green straw still in the wrapper. She didn't look at him when she spoke. She spoke at him. "Just drive," she said, like he'd been hesitating on purpose. "And please don't try to impress anyone today." His hands tightened on the steering wheel. Traffic crawled. A delivery truck blocked the lane. The GPS rerouted with a chirp that sounded too cheerful for how bad the morning had gotten. He could feel the weight of the moment riding in the car with them, her whole company, her board, her reputation, her panic. And the part she didn't name out loud, the billion-dollar deal that would either save her or finally expose her. Then the Bluetooth connected. A voice filled the car in a language she didn't recognize at all.
Rapid, formal, impatient.
Her head snapped up. "What is that?" she demanded. He didn't flinch. "That's their assistant," he said softly. "They think we missed the earlier dial-in. They're asking if they should cancel the meeting." Her eyes narrowed. "Why would you know that?" He glanced at the clock. 3 minutes. He could already see the hotel entrance and the revolving doors, the people in suits moving like they were late for things that mattered more than anyone's feelings. He swallowed once, controlled, and made a choice. "Because I speak their language," he said. "And if you want, I can keep them on the line until you're ready." For the first time all morning, she looked at him like she was seeing a person. Maya Whitaker had built her life the way people build glass towers in Chicago. Clean lines, sharp edges, and no room for weakness. She was 41, the CEO of a logistics tech company that had grown fast, too fast, and now lived under a microscope. The headlines called her fearless. Her investors called her driven. Her employees, if they were honest, called her hard. But Maya didn't have time for softness. Soft was for people who could afford mistakes. She hadn't slept more than 4 hours a night in weeks. Not because she loved the hustle, but because she was scared. The company's cash runway was shrinking. A competitor had just launched a cheaper product. Her board had started sending those carefully worded emails that sounded polite but meant, "We're watching you." She didn't talk about it with anyone. Not with her assistant, who smiled too much. Not with her friends, who she rarely saw anymore and didn't really trust to understand. Not with her mother, who still called Maya baby, like the woman hadn't been paying her own bills since she was 16. Maya's divorce had been final for almost a year, but it still sat inside her like a bruise that never faded. She told herself she didn't miss her ex-husband. She just missed having someone in the apartment when the nights got loud with thoughts. Her condo overlooked the river. The view was supposed to make her feel like she'd made it. Most mornings, it just made her feel alone. That morning, she'd stood in her kitchen, watching the coffee drip, and felt something in her chest tighten for no reason she wanted to admit. She looked at her phone. 10 unread texts, 12 emails flagged urgent, and one reminder she'd set herself at 2:13 a.m. in all caps. Do not screw this up. The Zurich deal was the kind of contract people used the word transformational for. A European investment group wanted to partner, inject capital, and scale Maya's platform internationally. $1 billion in value, easily, if she could land it. If she could sound confident. If she could hide how close the company was to bleeding out. By 7:30 a.m., she was in a black SUV heading downtown. Her driver, Marcus Reed, had picked her up with his usual calm. Mid-30s, quiet voice, clean suit, polite. She'd barely learned anything about him beyond the basics. She hadn't cared to. The first time she'd met him, She'd assumed he was just another driver from a service her security team arranged. She remembered thinking that he looked too educated for the job, and that thought had annoyed her. People were supposed to stay in their lanes. It made life easier. When he said good morning, she answered without looking up from her phone. He wasn't what she expected. He drove smoothly, like he respected the road. He didn't try to chat her up like some drivers did, the ones who thought a CEO wanted opinions about the weather or politics. Marcus kept the car quiet unless she asked a question. Maya liked that. She liked anything that didn't demand more of her. But on the way to the hotel that morning, her tension had spilled out. She'd snapped at him about traffic, about the route, about nothing. She'd said that thing about impressing anyone today, half joking, half warning. It was a small cruelty she didn't even label as cruelty. It was easier to treat someone like furniture when your own life felt like it might collapse. Marcus hadn't reacted. He'd just driven. Now the car edged toward the hotel entrance, and Maya's throat felt dry. She'd rehearsed her talking points all week. Yet her mind kept flashing to worst-case scenarios. What if they asked about the customer churn? What if they pushed back on her valuations? What if her board decided she was the problem? She stared at her reflection in the window.
A woman in control.
A woman who didn't cry. A woman who didn't need anyone. Then the call came through in that unfamiliar language, and the world tilted. Maya's heart thudded with sudden, stupid fear. She wasn't afraid of the language itself. She was afraid of not knowing. She was afraid of being caught off guard. She was afraid someone else had power in a room she thought she owned. Marcus kept one hand on the wheel and tapped a button on the steering column. The voice continued. He answered, smoothly, in the same language, like switching a light on. Maya watched his face as he spoke. His expression didn't change much, but there was something different in the way his eyes focused. He wasn't guessing. He wasn't performing. He was fluent. He listened, then replied again, calm and respectful. He glanced at the rearview mirror, not to seek approval, but to check if she wanted him to stop. Tell them we're 2 minutes out, Maya said, trying to sound like this was normal. Tell them we're grateful they're still available. Marcus spoke again, and the voice on the phone softened. He said something that made the person laugh lightly. Maya felt her cheeks heat with irritation and something worse.
Embarrassment.
When the call ended, the car was quiet again. The Starbucks cup still sweated in the back seat like it was alive. Maya tried to regain control. So, she said, sharper than she meant to be. You speak that? Yes, Marcus said. How many languages do you speak? He paused, like the answer was personal. 9 with confidence, he said. A couple more at a basic level. Maya blinked. Why are you driving? It came out blunt, almost insulting, and she knew it. She knew it the second the words left her mouth. She waited for him to shut down or get defensive. Instead, Marcus kept his eyes on the road. Because this job works with my life right now, he said. And because I like it. That answer irritated her too, because it didn't fit her mental boxes. People were supposed to either chase status or admit defeat. Works with my life sounded like someone who had boundaries. Maya didn't understand boundaries. She understood pressure. They pulled up to the hotel. A doorman opened her door. Cold air hit Maya's face and she suddenly realized her hands were shaking slightly. She curled them into fists and stepped out. Inside, the lobby smelled like polished wood and expensive cologne. Her executive team waited near the elevators, all smiles and tense eyes. Her CFO, Dana, walked up with that look that meant trouble. We got bumped, Dana whispered. They moved the call earlier because of a flight change, and their interpreter isn't available until next hour. If we don't start now, we lose the slot. Maya felt her stomach drop. She opened her mouth, ready to blame someone, anyone. Then she remembered the phone call. The way Marcus had held the line steady. The way he had understood. Maya turned back toward the entrance where Marcus had followed a few steps behind, staying discreet the way drivers were expected to. She hesitated. Every instinct in her body screamed not to do it. Not to involve a driver. Not to appear unprepared. Not to let anyone see she needed help. But the alternative was watching a deal slip away because she refused to accept help from the wrong kind of person. She walked back to him, her heels clicking too loud on the marble. She lowered her voice. "Marcus," she said, the word tasting strange in her mouth.
Could you interpret?
Just for this call. Temporarily. Marcus didn't smile. He didn't look smug. He didn't say, "I told you so." He just nodded once. "If your team is okay with it," he said. Maya swallowed hard.
I'm okay with it.
And that was the first small crack in the armor she'd been wearing for years. The conference room was too bright. The walls were glass, the table gleamed, and Maya felt like she was sitting in a fishbowl. Dana looked confused when Maya introduced Marcus as a language support. A couple of executives exchanged looks that were quick and judgmental.
Maya felt it like a slap.
She wanted to take it back. She wanted to pretend she'd never asked. But then the video call started. On the screen were three faces, two men and one woman, all in a sleek office with a city skyline behind them. They spoke quickly in their own language.
Maya caught only the tone, businesslike, impatient, ready to move on.
Marcus sat slightly behind Maya, not centered, not trying to claim attention. He wore a discreet headset Dana handed him. He listened, then translated softly into Maya's ear without interrupting the flow. Maya answered in English. Marcus translated back with the same steadiness. Within 5 minutes, something shifted. The investors' faces relaxed. The woman on the screen leaned forward, more engaged. The men stopped checking their watches. They asked deeper questions.
Maya could almost feel the deal reattaching itself to the present moment, like a thread she'd almost lost.
Then came the tricky part. One of the investors said something long and complicated, and Maya could tell from Marcus's pause that there was nuance. She held her breath. Marcus leaned in and whispered, "He's saying they like the product, but they're worried about reputational risk. They heard a rumor about a lawsuit related to labor practices with one of your subcontractors." Maya's pulse spiked. It wasn't even her company directly. It was a subcontractor. But in business, perception was reality. Her mind raced. If she denied too quickly, she'd look guilty. If she admitted too much, she'd scare them off. The room felt smaller. The glass walls felt like they were pressing in. Maya tried to answer, but her voice caught. She looked down at her notes. Her hands were damp. This was her breaking point, not because of the question, but because she realized how exhausted she was from carrying everything alone. She'd built a life where needing help felt like failure. She'd treated people as tools. She'd believed respect was something you earned through dominance. And now the deal that could save her company depended on a man she'd dismissed without thinking. She felt a sting behind her eyes, unexpected and dangerous. She blinked hard, furious at herself. Marcus's voice stayed calm. "Tell them you take it seriously," he whispered. "Tell them you already ordered an independent audit, and you'll share results. And ask what standards they'd like included so they feel ownership." Maya stared at him for half a second. It wasn't just translation. It was strategy. It was emotional intelligence. He wasn't saving her with magic. He was helping her tell the truth in a way people could hear. She took a slow breath. Then she spoke. She acknowledged the concern. She described what she'd already set in motion. She invited them into the solution instead of fighting them. Marcus translated with a tone that carried humility and confidence together. The investors conferred briefly off mic. Maya's stomach flipped. When they returned, the woman on the screen smiled slightly. "We appreciate the transparency," Marcus translated. "We want partners who can face problems without hiding." Maya felt her shoulders sag with relief so strong it almost hurt. The call ended with next steps and promises of paperwork. Not a fairy tale, yes, not fireworks, but something real. The deal was alive.
A pass forward.
When the screen went dark, Maya looked around the room. Her team was quiet. Dana looked stunned. One executive cleared his throat like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the right words. Maya stood, suddenly aware of how her knees felt weak. She turned to Marcus. "Thank you," she said, and her voice sounded rougher than she wanted. "I didn't know." Marcus nodded, gentle but not indulgent. "Most people don't," he said. And somehow that wasn't an accusation. It was just a fact. Later, Maya sat alone in the back seat of the SUV while Marcus drove her home. The city outside looked the same: traffic, storefronts, winter-gray sky, but something in Maya felt shifted, like a door had opened slightly in a room she'd kept locked. She kept replaying the moment she'd asked him for help.
The at in her face.
The fear of being judged. The relief when it worked anyway. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from her board chair. "Good work today.
Let's talk, Manda. Proud of the progress."
Maya stared at the words longer than necessary. She should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt tired in a new way.
Tired of pretending.
She looked up at the rearview mirror. Marcus's eyes met hers briefly, then returned to the road. "Maya," he said, surprising her by using her name. "Are you okay?"
She almost laughed.
The question was simple, human, and it made her feel exposed. "I don't know," she admitted quietly. "I think I'm embarrassed." Marcus nodded like that made sense. "That's not the worst feeling," he said. "It usually means you learned something." Maya swallowed. "I treated you like you were less than me," she said, the words heavy. "I'm sorry." Marcus didn't rush to make her feel better. He didn't say it was fine. He didn't give her a speech. He just let the apology land. "Thank you for saying that," he said after a beat. "Most people don't." A silence settled, not awkward, just real. As they crossed a bridge, the river below looked dull and cold, but it kept moving. Maya thought about her marriage, about the way she'd worked late and answered emails during dinners, about how she'd dismissed her ex-husband's complaints as weakness. She thought about the way she'd talked to employees when she was stressed. She thought about how easy it was to become the kind of person you once promised you'd never be. She wasn't suddenly transformed. She wasn't going to wake up tomorrow as a perfect leader with a perfect heart. Real life didn't do that. But she could do something small.
Something real.
That evening, she sent a message to Dana and her team, not polished, not corporate. "Today reminded me that we win by listening. If you need support, ask. If you see someone overlooked, speak up. I'm working on doing better too." Then she opened her contacts and stared at her mother's name for a long time before calling. Her mother answered on the second ring. "Baby." Maya closed her eyes. Her throat tightened. "Hi, Mom," she said. "I just wanted to hear your voice." Her mother didn't ask why. She didn't demand explanations. She just stayed on the line, filling the space with ordinary comfort. When Maya hung up, she felt something like a small win inside her chest. Not a billion-dollar victory.
Not a headline. Just a moment where she chose connection over control.
Before she stepped out of the SUV, she looked at Marcus again. "Do you ever think about teaching?" she asked. "Like languages. Or something. You'd be good at it. Marcus smiled faintly, like the idea had lived in him quietly for a while. Maybe someday, he said. Right now, I'm where I need to be. Maya nodded. Yeah, she said, and meant it. Me too. I think I'm finally figuring that out. She walked into her building carrying nothing but her phone and her tiredness and a new kind of awareness. The city didn't soften for her. The problems didn't disappear. The deal still had paperwork and negotiations and risks. Her loneliness would still show up on certain nights. But she'd learned something she couldn't unlearn. People are not roles. People are not assumptions. People are whole lives you haven't bothered to notice yet. And if you've ever misjudged someone because it was easier than being curious, or if you've ever been the one overlooked, you already know how much that can cost. The morning after the call, Maya woke before her alarm and stared at the ceiling of her condo while the city hummed below. The deal was still alive, but it wasn't done. Her mind kept replaying the conference room, the pause before she answered, and the quiet confidence in Marcus's voice when he guided her through the hardest moment. That memory unsettled her more than the financial risk. It challenged a story she'd told herself for years about who mattered and why. By the time she reached the lobby, she already felt behind. Emails stacked up overnight. One from legal. One from PR. One from her board asking for a revised timeline. She rubbed her temples while waiting for the elevator, telling herself to focus. Control had always been her survival skill. Lose that, and everything fell apart. Marcus was waiting outside, leaning lightly against the SUV. He straightened when he saw her.
Same calm posture, same neutral expression.
Nothing about him suggested yesterday had been unusual. Good morning, he said. Morning, Maya replied, then hesitated. Thank you again.
For yesterday.
He nodded once. You're welcome. That was it. No fishing for praise. No reminder of what he'd done. It made her uncomfortable in a way she couldn't quite name. They drove toward the office in silence. Maya watched the street vendors setting up carts, people walking dogs, a man jogging with headphones in. Ordinary lives moving forward while hers felt stuck between past assumptions and something new she didn't know how to handle. At a red light, she spoke without planning to. Where did you learn all those languages?
Marcus glanced at the mirror.
Different places, he said. My mom moved a lot when I was a kid. Jobs didn't stick. We went where the work was. Maya nodded, waiting for him to continue. He didn't. She realized he wasn't trying to impress her. He was just answering. If you don't mind me asking, she said carefully, did you ever want something else? Career-wise. He considered the question. I still do, he said. But wanting something doesn't mean you get it right away. Sometimes you take the job that keeps the lights on and teaches you patience. Maya swallowed. She thought about her own version of patience, which mostly involved pushing harder until something broke. At the office, the day blurred into meetings and calls. The Zurich group requested additional documents. Maya assigned tasks, reviewed projections, corrected language in emails. On the surface, she was the same CEO she'd always been. Inside, though, she kept noticing small things she'd ignored before. The way an intern hesitated before speaking. The way Dana's shoulders tightened when pressure came down from the board. By mid-afternoon, Maya realized she hadn't eaten. She grabbed her coat and headed out, unsure why she didn't just order delivery. Marcus stood up when she approached. I'm heading to a coffee place down the block, she said. You don't have to wait. He paused. I can walk with you, if that's okay. She nodded, surprised she didn't mind. The coffee shop was crowded and loud, the kind with mismatched chairs and handwritten signs about oat milk. They stood in line, surrounded by people scrolling phones and talking too loudly. Maya felt strangely exposed without a conference room or a screen between her and the world. When they sat down with their drinks, Maya wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "I've been thinking about yesterday," she said. "About how close I came to losing everything because I didn't know how to listen." Marcus looked at her, attentive but not intense. "You listened when it mattered." "Barely," she said. "And only because I was desperate." "That still counts," he replied. "Most people double down instead." She let that sit. "I don't want to be that person," she said quietly. "The one who misses what's right in front of her." Marcus studied his coffee. "Change usually starts with noticing," he said. "Not with fixing everything." Maya felt a tightness in her chest. This wasn't a miracle moment. He wasn't saving her life or rewriting her past. He was offering perspective, and it scared her because it meant responsibility. Back in the car, her phone buzzed with a voicemail notification.
Unknown number.
She almost deleted it, then stopped. It was from her ex-husband, recorded weeks ago. She'd ignored it at the time. She didn't play it yet. She wasn't ready. But she didn't delete it either.
The unexpected connection wasn't dramatic.
It didn't announce itself. It showed up in quiet conversations, in pauses she used to fill with control. Maya felt resistance rise every time she considered letting go of old habits. It was easier to stay sharp and distant. Safer. But as Marcus drove her home that evening, she realized something small but important had shifted. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel completely alone in her own head. The voicemail stayed on Maya's phone like a weight she kept shifting from one pocket to another. She didn't listen to it that night or the next morning. She told herself she was too busy, but the truth felt closer to fear. Fear that hearing his voice would unlock something she'd worked hard to seal off. By Wednesday, the pressure from the Zurich deal sharpened again. Legal flagged concerns. Finance wanted revised forecasts. One investor asked for a private follow-up call. Maya moved through the day on muscle memory, answering questions, projecting calm, keeping her tone even. She was good at this part. She'd trained herself to be. But underneath, something kept tugging at her. A sense that the old way of doing things wasn't enough anymore. That awareness didn't feel empowering. It felt like standing on ground that was starting to crack. On the drive to the office, Marcus noticed before she said anything. He always did. "You're quiet today," he said, not prying, just observing. "I'm thinking," Maya replied. He nodded and didn't push.
The city slid past the windows.
A construction crew blocked one lane, orange cones forcing a slow merge. Someone honked behind them. Maya felt her jaw tighten. At a stoplight, she finally said it. "I don't know how to do this differently."
Marcus glanced at her in the mirror.
"Do what?" "Be in charge," she said. "Without turning into someone I don't like." He considered that. "Leadership isn't about never being wrong," he said. "It's about deciding what you do when you find out you are."
Maya laughed softly, without humor.
"I've built my whole career on being right." "That's heavy," he said.
Toquería alone.
The words hit her harder than she expected. Alone. She'd never admitted how isolated she felt at the top. How every decision felt like it echoed back at her without warmth. At the office, a closed-door meeting with the board went longer than scheduled. They questioned her timeline. They asked about contingency plans. One of them suggested carefully that bringing in an external advisor might reassure investors.
Maya heard the subtext.
"We don't fully trust you." Her chest tightened. She defended her strategy with facts and confidence, but when the call ended, she stayed seated, staring at the blank screen. Her reflection looked older than she remembered. She reached for her phone and, before she could overthink it, played the voicemail. "Maya," her ex-husband's voice said, familiar and distant at the same time. I know you probably won't call back. I just wanted to say,
I'm not angry anymore.
I was hurt, yeah, but mostly I felt invisible. I hope you're okay. That's all. The message ended.
No accusations.
No demands. Just honesty. Maya closed her eyes.
Invisible.
The word lodged itself deep. She thought about how often she'd made people feel that way. Employees, partners, even Marcus before she bothered to see him. She'd believed distance was strength. She'd believed control was protection. Her breaking point wasn't loud. It didn't come with tears or raised voices. It came with a quiet realization that the life she'd designed so carefully had no space for vulnerability, and that absence was costing her more than any deal ever could. That evening, she stayed late, not working, just sitting in her office while the building emptied out.
The hum of the lights felt too loud.
She picked up her phone and typed a message to Marcus, then deleted it. Typed again.
Are you still downstairs?
The reply came quickly. Yes. She took the elevator down, feeling strangely nervous. He stood by the SUV, scrolling his phone. When he saw her, he put it away. Everything okay? He asked. No, Maya said honestly. But I think that's the point. They drove without destination for a few minutes, the city darker now, windows lit like small boxes of other people's lives. Maya spoke slowly, choosing words she wasn't used to using. I think I've been hiding behind my job, she said. Using it as an excuse not to deal with things I don't know how to fix.
Marcus listened, hands steady on the wheel.
A lot of people do that, he said. It works until it doesn't. She nodded. I don't want to lose this deal. But I also don't want to win it by becoming someone worse. That's a hard line to walk, he said. But it's possible. How do you know? She asked. He hesitated, then answered. Because I've crossed it before. And I didn't like who I was on the other side. Maya turned to him, surprised. What happened? He shook his head gently. Another time.
She respected that.
It reminded her that trust wasn't built by forcing confessions. As they pulled up outside her building, Maya felt something settle. Not peace, exactly. More like acceptance. The understanding that growth didn't come from dramatic change, but from choosing discomfort over denial. Before getting out, she said, Tomorrow, I'm going to tell the board I'm bringing in an advisor. Not because they told me to. Because it's the right move. Marcus smiled faintly. That sounds like leadership. Maya stepped out into the cool night air, her thoughts heavy but clearer. She wasn't fixed. She wasn't fearless. But she was finally willing to face the parts of herself she'd ignored. And that, she realized, might be the most important negotiation she'd ever enter. Thursday morning came without drama.
No sudden mensajes. No urgent calls before a sunrise.
Just the steady rhythm of the city waking up and Maya sitting at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug that had gone lukewarm while she stared out at the river. For once, she didn't rush to refill it. She let it be what it was. She dressed simply that day.
No power suit.
No armor disguised as professionalism. Just something comfortable and clean. When Marcus pulled up, she noticed the way he held the door open without hurry, like time wasn't something to fight. On the drive downtown, Maya said, I'm going to tell them today. Marcus didn't need clarification. Good, he said. The board meeting was shorter than expected. Maya spoke plainly. She acknowledged the risks. She explained why an external advisor made sense, not as a sign of weakness, but as a way to strengthen trust. She didn't over-explain. She didn't perform confidence. She just told the truth. There was a pause. Then the chair nodded. Others followed. No applause.
No dramatic turnaround.
Just agreement. Afterward, Maya sat in her office, staring at the skyline. She felt lighter, not because the pressure was gone, but because she wasn't pretending anymore. The deal with Zurich moved forward slowly, the way real things do. More calls. More documents. No guarantees. That afternoon, she called her ex-husband back. They talked for 12 minutes.
About practical things. About nothing.
About how life looked from different angles now. When the call ended, Maya didn't feel healed. She felt honest. In the evening, she stopped by the coffee shop again, alone this time. She watched people come and go, each carrying stories she'd never know. She realized how often she'd walked through the world assuming she was separate from it. Above it. Now she felt part of it. On the ride home, she thanked Marcus again, not for the languages, but for the patience. He shrugged it off, but she could tell it mattered. At her condo before getting out, Maya said, "If this deal goes through, it'll be because a lot of people showed up in ways I didn't see before."
Marcus met her eyes in the mirror.
That's usually how it works. Upstairs, Maya placed her phone face down on the table and stood by the window. The city lights flickered on one by one. She thought about how success had taught her to move fast and feel less, and how close she'd come to losing something important, not just money, but perspective.
Things weren't perfect.
The company still faced risks. She still had habits to unlearn. Some nights would still feel empty. But there was a small win she could name. She'd learned to pause. To listen. To see people as more than roles. And maybe that was the lesson worth keeping. If you've ever had a moment where you realized the way you were moving through life wasn't the way you wanted to keep moving, you're not alone. Change doesn't arrive loud. Sometimes it sits quietly beside you, waiting for you to notice. Maya did.